All right, good evening. Welcome everyone to our Wake County Public School System Board of Education meeting. It is August 17th, calling this meeting to order at approximately 5:50. We do have a quorum with all board members here present at the table, along with Superintendent Moore and Councilor Jonathan Blumberg. So with that determination, if you all will stand with me, I'm going to start the Pledge of Allegiance. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, both those virtually and those here with us in person. Would like to ask for all of those that are present here in the room with us, if you would please make sure that you have on a face covering of some kind, and that is properly covering both nose and mouth, please. All right, we'll get started with our information items. First up is Superintendent's comments. Superintendent Moore.
Good evening, Chair Sutton and board members. Congratulations are in order to our 2021 Principal of the Year and Assistant Principal of the Year semi-finalists. 35 principals and 36 assistant principals received this recognition last week as voted on by their peers. Full lists of the semi-finalists can be found on our WCPSS team Facebook page. We will announce 5 finalists in each category on Thursday afternoon. Finalists will submit a portfolio, then a committee of principal and assistant principals will visit each school site. Finalists will also be interviewed by a panel that includes past winners. The 2021 Principal of the Year and Assistant Principal of the Year will be named on October 7th. We have seen clearly over the past 18 months just how important school leadership is to the well-being of our students, families, and employees. Congratulations again to our semifinalists and really to all of our school administrators for being the leaders their school communities need them to be. 2 of our schools, Lincoln Heights Environmental Connections Magnet Elementary and Zebulon GT Magnet Elementary, were among 15 winners of North Carolina Green Power's Solar Educational Package Grant. Each grant is valued at about $42,000. In addition to a 5-kilowatt collection of solar panels, the schools will receive sun power solar modules, a STEM curriculum, teacher training, environmental sensors, solar data monitoring, and more. This will provide an excellent opportunity for hundreds of students to hone their 4 C's skills of collaboration, creativity, communication, and critical thinking. As a part of the grant program, both schools will need to raise a portion of the funds on their own, and they have until September 30th to do so. Links to each school's fundraising page can be found on the WCPSS Facebook page. Donations with as little as $1 can be made. Thank you in advance for your support. Finally, I would like to take a moment to offer some words of welcome for our traditional calendar students returning to school on Monday. While we will begin the school year facing some now familiar challenges, it is my hope that students and staff alike will enter this school year with a renewed sense of spirit and a sense of purpose. Our top priority in all decisions will continue to be the health, safety, and well-being of our students, employees, and school communities, and ensuring that procedures are in place to support that. But we will also prioritize the social and emotional needs of our students. The isolation experience during the past year and a half reinforced how critical mental and emotional health are to learning. We must nurture and strengthen connections with students and families in order to move forward. Social, emotional, and academic learning will coexist in all classrooms. This whole child approach will guide us in meeting the diverse needs of all students. Armed with the hard-won lessons of the pandemic, I feel we are poised to explore further and innovate in ways that we may have only dreamed of. We are still brimming with diverse ideas, thoughts, and perspectives, united together in the pursuit of the best education for future generations. So I hope all of our students, families, teachers, administrators, and staff will approach the school year not only mindful of protecting and advocating for health and safety, but also making the most of the opportunity presented by this unique moment in time in welcoming back our students. Here's to a school year full of reconnection, optimism, and growth. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore, for those comments. I echo all the sentiments that you shared, and again, welcome back our students, faculty and staff, parents, families back to the 2021-22 school year. I just want to add to that last week this board made a unanimous and important decision to implement universal face coverings for pre-K 12. And I want to commend this board for taking such a important stand, as did many other boards of education and other elected bodies around in the area and around the state. In the last 2 weeks since that vote, we've seen about 8 local school boards reverse their decision to offer optional face coverings and go to universal pre-K face coverings. And as well as a number of cities and towns have also chosen to now have mandatory face coverings in public facilities. This says to me that this was the right decision made by this board. So again, I applaud and commend all of my fellow board members for taking such a stand. That decision was made in the health and safety interests of our students, faculty, staff, and as you have heard in our work session and in Superintendent Moore's comments, we will continue to focus on the health and safety of all stakeholders in the Wake County Public School System. Thank you. Vice Chairman Haffey.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. Well said. I have had the pleasure of visiting 7 of my schools so far, and I am always excited to see the teaching and learning happening in the classroom. And see the buzz of the hallways as students move back and forth, and school is in session. It looks different this year with more people in the building, but I can honestly say I would feel comfortable if my own children were enrolled in any one of these schools. And in fact, my kids this year are split between 2 calendars. That was my choice. And so as I took my middle schooler up, I heard for the past few weeks, I made a new friend. I did this on a quiz, and you know, the always quality response, fine. As always, the Wake County Public School System's faculty and staff are phenomenal, but once again, we are needing the assistance of our broader community. Chair Sutton talked about the need for masking. We heard from Wake County public health officials about the importance of masking and increasing our vaccination rates. We heard earlier in the work session about how that can impact a child's ability to stay in person instead of needing to quarantine. And as this year continues, I ask for all of us to share patience. All of us, parents, students, staff, we're all tired. We all want this pandemic to be over. We need patience with our bus drivers and cafeteria workers who are feeling the impact of staffing shortages, our teachers and school staff as that clause, all other duties as assigned, gets put into places that we did not imagine as this year goes on. And patience as we get used to new norms with more of our students in the building who may have not been in the building last year as they understand what it means to be in person during this pandemic. We heard that we need people. Schools everywhere need people, but please consider stepping up or sharing our staffing needs with your networks so that we can make this year an excellent one for our students at wcpss.net/careers. Thank you.
All right, we'll start with this side this afternoon. Ms. Johnson-Hostler.
Thank you. And as my colleagues have all recognized that our year-round schools have been back in place, but our traditional folks are ready to return, and our teachers physically started to return to their buildings this week, although we know they work year-round. And so well wishes to everyone as we start what is already starting out to be a year of unknowns. Last year, people several times quoted they were tired of hearing us say grace, so this year you'll be tired of, maybe a few of us, at least me, talking about patience. Largely because there is a ton of unknowns, and just like each one of you, I can speak for myself, I want to know. I want to be able to give my child some answers. And one of the hard parts about being a parent, some of us have to decide if we're honest, and the truth is we don't know. And we're going to have to be patient and watch how things shake out. And that's not easy, because generally, even as they get older, they still have an expectation that we'll be able to have answers, and we don't. And that's difficult. And so it's the mantra I've already started singing in my own house, and so it's probably the mantra I'll start singing here from the board table, is to be patient. One, as we respond continuously, appreciate the feedback that we get, but be patient that we are reading them and the response is slower, and also be patient that we'll make decisions. And sometimes the answer will be, we can't make the decision this week because there are unknowns. So just a heads up for those of you, I will be expecting to hear from you that you want me to stop saying patience, but that's my word for this year. Last year it was grace. Again, and thank you, Superintendent, for stealing the thunder on Lincoln Heights. We're super excited, so please, please, please donate money. One of the things about the unknown is sometimes you feel better when you can do something that you know it will bring good, and donating to those schools will give you some clear satisfaction of something that you can bring some closure to, because that's the thing about the unknown, is there's no closure as well. So please, please support Lincoln Heights as well as Zebulon Elementary School on their wonderful gifts, but the fact that they need to raise money, so please support them. Lastly, as all of us start to visit schools, it did not dawn on me when I went into the storm this week, on a stormy day, by the way, that I was entering a school with only 2 grades, which I was aware of, but not completely aware that none of them had fully experienced high school. And so watching students and families, and by the way, they had 700 of 900 families show up, which is amazing for high school, as you heard me say earlier. Generally, high school parents, we start to phase out our attendance to events like that. But it was a clear reminder to me that for the first time, at least in my career on this board, that I was entering a school with families and students who had no idea what high school looked like or felt like fully. And so everything was extremely new to them. And of course, they knew that that's always the case for the 9th graders, but I don't think our amazing principals and admin team really thought about what that meant. So I share that with you to say is that we have a whole school that's going to be walking into the unknown. And while you can give as much information as you want to prepare people, the unknown is scary. And so if our 9th and 10th graders can do it bravely and boldly as they were showing up with all the excitement, knowing that it is completely unknown to them, and there are no peers there to lead the way, they will be making the way themselves, then I certainly, hopefully, you'll find the same encouragement I did from watching 14 and 15-year-olds brave the unknown with open hearts and open minds. And I hope that's how we all can begin this school year. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Cash.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. So I'm going to start off with a few negatives, but I'm going to end on a positive. So this has been a rough week, and I say that in perspective of first world problems, because that's what I'm saying here. And I know that some have not been happy with Ms. Carter and I this week. And I just want to say thank you for the support that I've received by texts and emails from so many people, from a lot of elected officials on both sides, but the Republicans asked me not to mention their names. And I just appreciated that, for them to speak out and talk to me. I appreciated my family this week. I've worked 6 evenings in a row at Wake Med Hospital, and that's not been an easy week as well. And I appreciate my friends that have reached out to me many times. But I also really appreciate my district constituency. They know me well. I meet with a lot of them on a regular basis, and many that don't always agree with me know what I stand for, and they know me well. But I've always fought. I fought hard to get the kids back in school when we were struggling with that in the beginning. And they know my consistent message is that I want them in school and I want to keep them in school. So they understand that. And so I really appreciate my district, the constituency I have there, and I love my district a lot, actually. In 2010, On a different note, I went to Haiti after the earthquake in Haiti, and on a medical mission team. Being a pharmacist, there was a need for that, but then I went the next 6 years there in a row to minister to those people, and I also love the Haitian people a lot. The resilience in Haiti is unbelievable. So my heart goes out to Haiti now because they are now in just had another earthquake. And I've talked to the medical students that are now doctors that I've worked with in the past, and they're okay because they're closer to Port-au-Prince, but they are devastated that they can't get to the people that are hurt really bad because there are no roads out into those areas, and there are people still in the rubble. And that's the third world problems that are out there that put me back into perspective of what is happening in our full world. So I hope to go back, but I feel really bad, and my heart goes out to them. On a positive note, well, it's not, my grandson goes to Moore Square, and he's had a rough week. That's not the positive part. But he is a special needs student at Moore Square, has Tourette's, fairly severe. But I want to thank, he has the most awesome team of helpers there, teachers and IAs. And I'm going to name 3 that have made the beginning of this school year unbelievably good for him in the sense that he needed what they are giving him, and he needed to be back in school. So Mr. Savory at Moore Square is actually his one-on-one assistant, and if I had $1 million, I would give it to him because he's worth everything. And Miss Mitchell is the IA there, and Miss Oak is one of Elliot's teachers as well. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to them because, I mean, if it wasn't for them, I don't know if he would have walked in the front door every day. It's a little bit of a struggle, but as long as Mr. Savory is at the front door waiting for him, the day goes much better. So I just want to give a shout out. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Cash. Mr. Haggerty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I've been very concerned this week as we've seen school openings around the country come back and the number of quarantine cases we've seen in different jurisdictions. In some of these situations, a family in Nashville, 1,000 students in quarantine. Some school districts in Florida, over 5,000 students and staff in quarantine. And that makes the work we're doing so very important here. I know that oftentimes the school board meetings are what draw people to come and watch, but a lot of the information, a lot of the decisions we make, a lot of the information that's shared is in the work sessions. And so if you haven't had the opportunity to go back and watch any of the work sessions, I'd urge you to, so you could learn about some of the steps that we're taking, some of the precautions, and some of the reasons behind some of the actions that we're looking at. I think, in the work session, we talked about all the different priorities, and there's so many priorities you could call top priorities, but limiting, reducing kids' time out of school or away from instruction has to be one of our basic fundamental purposes. I think supporting our student and our staff's physical and mental health has to be one of our top purposes. And then the challenge is how we're doing more than we've done before with less staff and resources is a big ask for everybody involved while we're going out and trying to recruit as many people for these key vacancies that we have. I've asked, and I think staff is committed to providing more clear communication to parents to help them understand and families and to navigate the new rules and new protocols, what quarantine means and what situations can occur and what they can expect, what are clear expectations for students and families coming into the school year. I've gotten lots of concerns from parents about lunchtime procedures, about quarantine procedures, and I kept telling them, just wait for this meeting, wait for our work session, and staff will go and explain a lot of those, and we did get some good answers and explanations today. So again, a lot of the information to a lot of questions that we've had was in the work session. I do encourage anyone interested to access that, find the information that's there, know that we're pledging to get more communication out there. And again, we thank our teachers, we thank our parents, we thank our families, but I want to give a special thanks to so many people in our medical community who've been in contact the last couple of weeks, the folks at Rex Hospital, and remember their work and their philanthropy, reaching out to help kids get started in school with school equipment. Remember, it was Rex that provided the N95 masks to our district last year, to Wake Med and everything they've done with their outreach and their advocacy, and all of our individual doctors and physicians that are coming out and trying to support students and families during all of this. Everyone that I've talked to, no matter what their role in the medical profession right now, has just been exhausted. And we just want to communicate that we appreciate everything that they're doing, and we'll do what we can to support them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haggerty. Ms. Carter.
Thank you. All right. Well, for me, I wasn't going to speak about how hard the last few weeks were, but since Ms. Cash did, I feel I need to at least acknowledge it. It was difficult, but also I remain focused. I'm here to focus, do a lot of work that is not done at this table. It is done late at night, weekends, during the day, and remain focused on keeping our kids in school daily as much as possible. And I'm going to continue to do that work. I respect difference of opinions. No problem, and I do my best to respond to folks if they email me, and having that open dialogue. So I appreciate all sides, middle and between, what have you. But that said, moving on to what I really enjoy is going to the schools, and I went to Adams Elementary and had a great time as always. They were all focused on a book, and I'll get the names of the pandas wrong, so I won't even try. But they were acting out the scenes. They were reading the book. They had made panda ears, which I kind of really liked. And then I got to a classroom that was wrapping up math, and they had kind of celebrated because they've already reached, year-round just starting, guys. They've already accomplished one of their class goals that they set for themselves, which was just fabulous to be able to see that had just happened. And it wouldn't be, time to talk if I hadn't had a beautification day. So I was so excited because Northwoods, I got to go to a different one this time and mix it up. I was not in the bushes this time. I was doing mulch. I had a great time, whether it was scooping it, I don't even know how many barrels. It was probably wheelbarrows, probably over a dozen, well over a dozen. Had a great time. Had a student just run up to me and was so excited because he had found a cicada shell. So, we just had to stop everything over that because, the mulch was just going to have to wait. So it was fabulous. I just want to thank all of the school staff, all the kids that were out there, family, community members. It was this past Saturday, and it was quite humid. And you didn't really have to do anything to sweat, but we were active and we were doing things. So it was quite an event, but really enjoyed that. And attended a summer session to writing slam. Ms. Kushner was there as well, Ms. Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore. Am I forgetting? I think. Okay. And you're pointing. Who am I looking for?
Did you get, sorry.
Yes,
sorry.
yes, and enjoyed it. It was another great event, and just hearing just the talented students that we have, and when we give them that, it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to be where you're at. It's amazing to see what they're able to do. And again, they had Jordan's Cakes, and I'm just going to say, if you're on Instagram, because this is how she's promoting it, staff is really, it's Jordan with the Y, and then S as in Sam, Way, like W-A-Y, of Cake. Please check her out. She was a student in the session 1 writing slam. I'm just telling you, okay, so we're going off a tangent, but the first was strawberry cake, and then we had the red velvet. But I'm just saying the talent of our students. This is one of our students still in school, and she is, working this side thing over here and doing amazing. So please check her out. And the other thing, I wanted to take a moment to recognize the Green Hope High Unified Track and Field Team. It was, I saw it yesterday, so I believe it was announced yesterday. It might have been announced before, but they've been selected to represent North Carolina at the Special Olympics USA Games in June of 2022. So just a huge congratulations. That's a great program, and congrats to all of the students involved and the coaches. And then in closing, for those who live in D9, I'll be hosting another D9 Connection meeting on Sunday, August 29th at 4 p.m. So if you're interested, there'll be a Google Meet link in my blog, or you can email me to ask. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carter. Mrs. Scott.
Thank you, and good evening. I don't have a whole lot to add. I very much appreciate what my colleagues have shared regarding safety in the community, regarding patients. And I was very supportive of Ms. Carter and Ms. Cash for their bold vote, because you always serve with students in mind. And I do appreciate that very much about the both of you. Zebulon Elementary School and Lincoln Heights, they do have those donations, and in fact on the Facebook page for Zebulon Elementary, they have a link to that as well, so they can hopefully take advantage of that grant. I also wanted to thank our PTAs that are providing lunches and treats, breakfasts and things for our teachers as they're coming back, and of course this has already been taking place. But I also just want to give a little plug that not all of our schools have active PTAs. So if you reach out to...
Thank you. I'd like to add welcome to traditional school that starts in 6 days. But I know from the teachers and staff, you already started. A lot of hard work that you're already doing and going to be throughout the semester. So thank you. And of course, thank you and congratulations to all who are in year-round and modified, making things work right now. I'm slow to present resolutions that get sent to us, but the president of the Wake County Indian Education Parent Committee sent us a resolution from the Indian Education Parent Committee, and I think it's important to give some public attention to that. They are sort of a subsidiary of us, and so I'd like to read that for the record. This is a statement in support of COVID-19 safety measures in the Wake County Public School System. The Wake County Indian Education Parent Committee has the responsibility to advise the Wake County Public School System on matters related to indigenous peoples and to the education of American Indian and Alaska Native students. Centuries ago, our ancestors' early encounters with colonists and settlers ignited outbreaks of contagious disease that devastated indigenous communities and decimated our populations. We are descendants of indigenous people who survived these pandemics, and we acknowledge not only the loss of our ancestors, but also the loss of many of our languages and cultural teachings. We take pandemics seriously, and we understand that the collective public health measures are required to protect our youth, our elders, and everyone in our communities. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the Wake County Public School System has developed a safe return to school plan that takes into consideration the health, safety, and well-being of students, employees, and others who are part of the larger community served by the district. The Wake County Indian Education Parent Committee urges students, parents, employees, and others to support and follow this plan based on the recommendations of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and public health experts everywhere. We urge all who are eligible but not yet vaccinated against COVID-19 to receive vaccinations as soon as possible. Approved by the Parent Committee, August 16th, 2021, sent to us by the president of that organization. And I will note that things I've seen in the news, the Native peoples have some of the highest vaccination rates of anybody. So hats off to them. Thank you for your witness. And And thank you for calling attention to the historical impact of pandemics to your communities, and we need to assure the same does not happen to the future. Finally, I'd like to again give updates as to where we are, both here in Wake County Public Schools and Wake County, with respect to the COVID cases. At our work session, I had noted that the 7-day rolling average here in Wake County was 303.8 cases per 100,000 population. That was from the data that was uploaded yesterday. Between the time I left home and the break between our meetings, new data came out. So currently in Wake County, we're at 311.2 weekly cases per 100,000 population. From the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, they reported the data from the week of 8/8 through 8/14. This is the collected data where we can actually get disaggregation based on our age cohort groups. Over that entire week, the county was at 285.1, so you can see the increase just since the end of that reporting period and now. So while the entire county was at 285.1 cases per 100,000 population, the 5 to 9-year-olds in Wake County are at 392.6. Now, that's cases per 100,000 population. Now, I will note that last week, the week previous, it was at 425.5. The big discrepancy is because of the lag in reporting. So this week's cases are actually higher than they were last week, but because more cases will come in, it's going up. So the 392.6 is likely a very low number. It's likely to exceed the 425.5 from a week ago. The 10 to 14-year-olds are currently at 322.7 cases per 100,000 population. The 15 to 17-year-olds are currently at 285.1 cases per 100,000 population. For bigger context, the 5 to 9-year-olds represent 6% of the population. They represented 8.2% of the COVID cases in Wake County last week. 10 to 14-year-olds represent 6.6% of the population. They represented 7.5% of the cases last week. 15 to 17-year-olds represent 4.3% of the population, and they represented 4.3% of the cases from last week. If we look at the overall case rate for 5 to 17-year-olds, last week it was 338 cases per 100,000. That needs to be put in context of the high in January of 342 cases per 100,000 population. So we've basically met the January peak right now. As of last week, the 5 to 9-year-olds still are the highest demographic of any demographic in Wake County. There are only 3 counties in the state where the 5 to 9-year-olds represent the greatest percentage of cases, the greatest infectivity rate. Right now, Wake County, of the 5 to 17-year-old population, is 19th out of the 100 counties in North Carolina. And sadly, when you look at the cases in Wake County schools themselves, they continue to grow. Last week had the highest number of cases ever reported. We're 1.5 times higher in the number of Wake County schools cases than we were at the peak in January. So there's a lot of work that we still need to do. We want to keep students in person in schools, but if we don't work together to bring these case numbers down, we're going to see a lot more kids in quarantine, and more drastic actions are going to need to be taken. So we need to do everything we can to prevent the need from worse scenarios having to be implemented. Everybody, be careful, please. Thank you.
Mrs. Kushner.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. To my colleagues, I want to share Ms. Carter and Ms. Mahaffey and Superintendent Moore lifting up student voice when we were able to be at the Summer Writing Slam last week at Southeast Raleigh Elementary. It was really a great night, not just for great cake including the best red velvet cake I've ever had. But also just to hear the authentic student voice, these experiences our students have in our schools, sharing their most inner and very raw emotions and thoughts through wonderful writing, and to the teachers, the Office of Equity Affairs that support that work. I would encourage all of you, when you get your book from 2019 and 2020 and 2021 of the summer writing summaries, to read through it so we can really share the experiences that our students are having, not only in our schools but in our communities, with bias, with homophobia, with sexism, with racism. They are with other fears that they share with us, bullying in our schools. Students share these experiences where we have to recognize students need to take care of each other. And adhering to protocols is like anti-bullying. It's taking care of each other. And we need to look at it that way. And the writing was a wonderful way to express that. I also want to lift up the students from Middle Creek High School and a former Sanderson student who participated in the North Carolina Public School Forum's Digging Deeper session that they looked into and expressed vividly the impacts that HB 324 would have on censoring the ability of teachers and students to learn together about real history. So shout out to Matt Chaldone, who will be Teacher of the Year forever in my heart, of Middle Creek High School, his students, including Kayla Keaton, who is a recent graduate of Middle Creek, who is heading to Yale, and I hope has a bright future in history. I hope she becomes a historian, as well as a former Sanderson student who's now at UNC Greer Webb. There were some just very clear and heartfelt expressions from our students about how this bill will affect their teaching and that they receive and their own learning. So thanks to them and to the Public School Forum for putting that webinar on. You can catch it online if you're interested in learning more. I want to also lift up, because I didn't get my questions at a work session to squeeze them in, Mr. Sutton. I'm going to squeeze them in right now. I want to encourage, lift up Ms. Cash's comment about school being the safest place for our kids. As Dr. Martin and all of my colleagues, I think we share that goal across this board to have in-person instruction maximized for our kids. And because of COVID and the health department working with us to contain COVID in our community as well as in our school communities are largely unvaccinated. And if there is an exposure of COVID, we're going to need to follow quarantine. And even if we have 3,000 students quarantined at a time, that's a lot of noise that we're going to receive. I think Ms. Cash spoke to that. But at the same time, 90% of our kids are going to be in school. And we need to support our students and our teachers and our schools to keep students in person instruction as much as is possible. So that's, I think, our shared goal, and certainly what I, as a one board member, are focused on. And so I'm very concerned about the staffing and labor pressures that we were presented with at work session. We are putting a lot on our staff. I want to thank everyone all our staff is engaged right now, whether they've gone back to work days at traditional schools or started their year-round calendars. I am just so grateful to every single employee of the Wake County Public School System. We are facing stresses, and I want to go forward with protecting our staff and our students, and I want everyone in our community to support that so we can support and protect each of us as we try to get back to real learning in our schools in the coming year, because our students and our staff deserve that. So I want also to and thank everyone on the board for the attention we have given, all the emails, all the research, all the work that we've been reviewing. This is a hard time, and I really thank my colleagues for the hard work. Thank you.
All right, thank you, board members, for all of those comments and the sentiments. I also want to recognize the Cary Chamber of Commerce for their recent elected officials reception. There were several board members, I think almost all board members were there in attendance at that event last week. And so thank you, shout out to the Cary Chamber of Commerce. All right, before asking for a motion to approve tonight's agenda, need to amend a couple of things. First, I would like to remove the approval of the meeting minutes from the consent agenda. There are a couple of errors that have been found on those meeting minutes, so I want to remove those. Okay, all right. Okay, got it. So we'll disregard that. We're leaving the approval of the meeting minutes on the agenda. I do want to remove or move item 4A under academic advancement, Arc of the Triangle, move that item from consent to action. So the only change is moving item 4A, Arc of the Triangle, moving that item from consent to action. And with that, if I can ask for approval of tonight's agenda as amended.
Chair Sutton, I make a motion to approve tonight's agenda as amended.
Second.
Motion from Mrs. Mahaffey, second from Mr. Hegarty to approve tonight's meeting agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor show by the sign of aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Tonight's agenda is approved. That takes us to our public comment agenda. As I indicated earlier, face coverings are now required for those attending Board of Education meetings to limit the spread of COVID-19. Board members, WCPSS employees, and the public must wear a face covering even if vaccinated. If you are unable to wear a face covering because of a disability or other reason, you may watch the live stream or listen by phone. If you are selected to give public comment and are unable to wear a face covering due to a disability or other reason, please let us know when completing the registration form. You must wait outside the building and will be contacted 5 to 10 minutes before your time to speak. After you are contacted, you'll be allowed to enter the meeting room to give public comment. You do not need to wear a face covering to speak, but you must do so if you remain in the room to attend the meeting. You cannot remain in the boardroom without a face covering. While you are outside the room, you may watch the live stream of the meeting or listen by phone. Public comment is accepted in writing, via video, or in person during regular meetings of the full board. The boardroom of the Wake County Board of Education can seat up to 60 members of the general public. If the number of people registered to attend a meeting, work session, or committee meeting exceeds this limit, seats will be allocated from a randomly generated list using Google software. During the public comment session, you may speak for up to 3 minutes. You will see a yellow light at the podium when you have 30 seconds remaining, then a red light when your time is up. If the public comment portion of the agenda exceeds 30 minutes, the board chair reserves the right to conduct other board business before inviting remaining speakers to the podium. The following citizens have submitted comments as part of our public comment portion of this evening's agenda. Their comments are linked on the same online agenda we're using for tonight's meeting. That agenda, as well as guidelines for those wishing to submit comments for future meetings, can be found at the school district's website, wcpss.net, under the tab labeled School Board. We have 63 written comments from members of the public. The topics and speakers whose comments are attached to this agenda are as follows. There are 38 speakers speaking on COVID preventive measures, including mask mandate, both in support and opposition. There are 2 speakers on Virtual Academy, 19 speakers with respect to the Athens Drive Public Library, 4 speakers that are on various topics, including ensuring student and staff privacy, Counselors Not Cops proposed technology policy, Wake County technology policies, and another responsible technology policies and SROs. So those are the 63 comments, written comments submitted for tonight. The actual speakers here in attendance, we'll move to those. And the first one is Stephanie Curran.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Stephanie Curran. I am mom to 3 children in Wake County, 2 of which are still in Wake County schools. I am founding member and president of North Carolina Stands Up. This evening, I would want to address the, quote, mask mandate firstly, and what I want to focus on is law. You've heard a lot about medical, this and that. I want to focus on the law. Specifically, the North Carolina Medical Practice Act. I understand we have one board member who is a licensed physician, undoubtedly very familiar with this act. Chapter 90 is the law that governs the practice of medicine in North Carolina. And I quote, "The practice of medicine or surgery includes any of the following acts: offering or undertaking to prevent or diagnose, correct, prescribe for, administer to or treat in any manner or by any means, methods or devices, any disease, illness, pain, wound, fracture, infirmity, defect, or abnormal physical or mental condition of any individual, including the management of pregnancy or parturition." A mask mandate is in violation of this law. You all, by mandating school districts, of course, administration of school teachers and students to wear a mask, you are violating the North Carolina Medical Practice Act, which again is law. By offering a mask, which is a device, you are in violation of law. Further, conspiring to coerce or direct others to commit criminal acts is obviously illegal. We plan to bring litigation based on this law and your violation of it in the coming days. If I'm told this is suspended due to emergency, I will say then we get to decline the medical treatment offered. 30 seconds. You can't mandate it. But most importantly, as I said, we plan to bring litigation regarding the illegal activities based on this law. And let me say, in the seconds I have remaining, it's not the only way we can bring litigation against the individual members of the board and the board as a collective. You're in violation of Article 5, Chapter 115C of the North Carolina General Statutes, which gives the board no power or duty to impose the use of medical devices. Thank you.
Karen Austin.
Hello. My name is Karen Austin, and I'm one of the 660 members of the Triangle Area Dyslexic Advocacy Facebook group. Right now, this district, like most others, is struggling to attract and retain general and special ed teachers. The pay isn't great, the conditions aren't ideal, and it's defeating to have only 39% of students literate. The average number of students with IEPs, regardless of disability, across the nation is 14%. Within the state of North Carolina, that drops down to 13%. And in Wake County, you've managed to slim it down to 12%. Impressive number until you factor in that 20% of the students in your classrooms have the specific learning disability of dyslexia and are not receiving appropriate interventions to make them literate. I get it. The higher the percentage of the IEPs, the more staff you have to hire, and then the more positions that sit empty despite incentives offered. However, in this district, literacy issues are not properly addressed in our gen ed classrooms, thus the need for so many special ed teachers. One way to cut down on the need for IEPs for all these struggling readers is to adjust the general ed setting. A general ed classroom that has curriculum designed and a teacher trained in structured literacy allows the literacy rate to increase as high as 90 to 95%. Class-wide implementation of the science of reading approach can produce results for an entire class that is comparable to costly one-on-one interventions for just one child. Addressing your general education problem will help relieve a lot of your special ed problems and save you money and resources in the long run. This year, the International Dyslexia Association Conference is in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I hear there's going to be an amazing session on parent advocacy. The main focus of the conference, however, is geared towards teachers, and that's who makes up over half of their participants. Invest in your classroom teachers and send a group to receive some of the best professional development from some leading experts. Think outside the box for your recruitment options and have a booth expo to showcase the district. In fact, attend yourselves and see that helping students achieve literacy is possible when teachers receive the training and support to properly teach students to read. I see improvements being made, but you need to step up your game if you want to stop hemorrhaging staff, taxing your resources, and churning out illiterate children.
Lindsay Tobin.
Hello. I am the mother of 3 young boys. My oldest will be starting kindergarten next week. This should be a time of excitement, but instead it is a time of stress, anxiety, and sadness. That my sweet, social, and joyful son is being robbed of a normal kindergarten experience, the beginning of his school career. With all the horrible things that COVID has brought us, we should be praising God that this has mostly spared children. So why are we still punishing them 18 months later? Last week, Dr. Fauci said he hopes that masking children will not have lasting negative effects on them. They do not fully understand the damage they can be doing to our children, and they do not seem to care much because they have failed to study it. Others have studied it, such as the Irish, who have decided no mask in school because of the negative consequences and lack of spread. In a June 2021 Journal of American Medical Association released a study testing carbon dioxide levels in masked children. JAMA found carbon dioxide levels in the inhaled air of children wearing masks was over 6 times higher than the unsafe threshold after only 3 minutes. This study was soon retracted with no explanation as to why or its flaws. My guess is the flaw was against the narrative. Yesterday, I was speaking to the principal of our new school, and I was told that my 5-year-old can share a ball at recess with another child, but they will not be playing tag with other children because they cannot touch other children. That is too dangerous, I was told. Imagine telling a 5-year-old to stop playing tag, a simple, lighthearted, and beloved childhood game that I play every day with my kids, because it's too dangerous. Too dangerous against an infection that since the beginning has had a 99.9% survival rate for anyone under the age of 65. Too dangerous an infection that in the last 18 months has reportedly taken 335 children under the age of 17. And while every death is heartbreaking, especially for the mother, it's important to note that this death rate only represented 0.673 of all the deaths among children at that time frame. Also too important to note was these children had comorbidities such as influenza, leukemia, diabetes, injuries, and poisonings. So it is suspect if these children actually died of COVID or with COVID. My remarks tonight are for the board members, but also for the parents who are hoping to continue this mask mandate. I know you want to protect your family, but I want you to realize the precedent you are setting. There will come a day when your government wants you or your family or your children to do something that you do not agree with. But in this moment in time, you are setting a precedent that these government entities can control your health procedure and care for your children. And where does it end? 15 days to slow the spread, and here we are with mask mandates and vaccine passports. Superintendent Moore, we need to know a plan. We need to know your exit strategy. You said that we can revisit this mask mandate every quarter, and I do not believe that is fair for our children. We must visit it every meeting. I want to hear where all the board members stand, because we will be here each week, each meeting, to stand up for our children's ability to breathe freely and be educated and treated like the normal, healthy children that they are. Thank you.
Holly Higgins Wiltshire.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Holly Higgins Wiltshire. It's really great to be here with you again this evening. While your last vote has me gravely concerned about the deteriorating mental health and well-being of our children, I think your hearts were in the right place. For most, I could see how torn you were. While you shared you were committed to doing the right thing for our children, I could hear the uncertainty in your voices. As I watched each of you share your rationale, it was clear something very important was missing in your resolutions. And that was truth and clarity. Truth, you know truth well. It's immutable. While science and truth are experienced at a measurable and observable level, this is also experienced this truth at a felt level. Experiencing truth is having chills when you hear something that resonates with your spirit. It's feeling an unyielding certainty, lucidity, and clarity of mind. And your decision to continue to remove parents' health care choices for their children and instead uphold the removal of medical freedoms, I can see and hear how torn you were inside. What I witnessed showed me that the majority of you did not have absolute unwavering truth, and it was not what you experienced. I attended the University of Wilmington right down the road. It was there that I learned about something that helps me stand firm in unwavering truth and guides much of my decision making: the scientific method. Watching you share your rationale on your votes triggered a memory of a video highlighting a study I learned about in college, and then again in many research methods courses later on. The video was a famous psychology experiment conducted in the 70s. In Milgram's study, a participant is instructed by an authority figure to participate in an experiment with a fellow learner. He was to perform as a teacher role. As a teacher, he's asked to administer an intervention to the learner. The caveat is that this intervention is known by the teacher to cause harm to the learner. Once he hears the first cry from the learner after he administers the intervention, he looks with concern to the experimenter, who confidently instructs him to proceed. When the teacher continues the experiment per the authority directive, he hears another louder plea from the person to stop. So again, he looks back with uncertainty to the authority figure, who tells him again the study must continue. Even though they both continue to hear the human's increasing painful pleas, I know you're looking to authority for guidance and discernment for your decision making. At the same time, you're also hearing the cries and the pleas from the children and family. I saw this juxtaposition in your vote 2 weeks ago. The experiment you're administering is causing pain to children. You've heard in this room firsthand from children who've told you they're suffering and asking for this to end. I'm also concerned about your well-being, okay? Your body is keeping score of this stress and trauma. After watching you talk through your rationale for your recent vote, even after you're confirming your vote was right this week, I don't think it's that you're confused of what to do. Rather, you need the courage and the bravery in your heart to do what's right. I want you to know that I am rooting for you. I encourage you to make data with integrity informed decisions. Listen to the children and your hearts. It's never too late to do the next right thing. Thank you.
Steve Lauderdale.
Thank you very much. I'm Steve Lauderdale. I'm here to express a bit of gratitude. I want to thank the board for all you've done in this very, very difficult time. Worst public health crisis in 100 years. So thank you very much for your dedication and work. I'm also inspired by the dedication of the Wake County school system staff. Not just the people here in this building, but the frontline workers, the bus drivers, the administrators that will meet kids at the door, the teachers, the cafeteria workers, the custodian staff, the maintenance people. Thank you all very much. I want to express my gratitude.
Dennis Bland.
Good evening, everybody. I want to take a different approach. I had a speech written. I like to kind of speak from my heart. I agree with her. I have seen the same thing in y'all's eyes, and I've seen y'all look me in my eyes, and you see the anger, and you're telling me to shut up in your head, that I need to listen. I get it. There has to be, let me rewind this, okay? 3 years ago, I was the first man with kids in a homeless shelter in Wake County. Now I run a business. I live in a good home. I have a happy family. This is America. That doesn't happen anywhere else. People come here. They're running here. They're flocking through the border right now to have this opportunity. All right, and what the example that we're setting right now I don't know if y'all are looking across the world, man. They're setting tents up. They're setting tents up outside people's houses. They're telling people to call their neighbors, call the police on their neighbors if they catch them without a mask. It's coming here, okay? The stuff that just happened in Afghanistan, they're here. They've been here. They've been training. All of this stuff right here, I was in D.C. on January the 6th. I watched all of it, okay? There's a big thing going on. This has nothing to do with masks. It has nothing to do with a vaccine. It has everything to do with taking America over. I was a conspiracy theorist 10 years ago, okay? I have all the information you need. You can take a look. Y'all are an education board. If y'all can't educate yourself when somebody offers you the education, where are we going to end up? Does any of this really matter? You know, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. The best mistake I ever made was to find this guy right here. That's Jesus Christ, okay? He changed everything. He changed everything. It wasn't my decision making. It was because I had him that was pushing me times I couldn't push myself. The Constitution was written by godly men. It was written for a reason. And if we continue down this road and we throw this Constitution in the trash, where's the rest of the world going to go? Is this the example we're going to set? Y'all have to be leaders. These cops have to be leaders. There's a reason why I've talked to all these cops, and they've said, I'm not going to enforce it. But they also said, I'm not going to take a stance. I said, well, that's kind of a stance, isn't it? There's a reason why they're not going to enforce it. It's time for us to start opening our eyes.
Laura Carver.
Good evening, school board members. Tonight I'd like to talk about COVID data. I'm going to start with North Carolina data. Currently hospitalized, let me get back up. We have 10.7 million people in the state of North Carolina. Currently hospitalized with COVID, we have 2,651, which comes to a percentage of 0.025%. COVID adult ICU patients, 665 in the whole state, 0.0062% in the state. If you want to go to our region, we're in the CAP-RAC region. That encompasses Wake, Franklin, Johnston, Harnett, and Lee counties with an approximate total population of 1.6 million. Currently hospitalized in total of those 5 counties is 208 people with 0.013% of the population. Adults in the ICU with COVID in this region is a total of 53 in all 5 counties, which comes to a percentage of 0.0033%. So rising case counts are not causing a transition of exceedingly high hospitalizations or ICU patients. If we want to go to national data in the U.S., we have had approximately 37.7 million cases of COVID and also 639,000 deaths. Per the CDC, conditions contributing to deaths, for 6% of deaths for COVID-19 was the only cause mentioned. For deaths with conditions or causes in addition to COVID-19, on average, there were 2.9 additional conditions or causes of death. If we go back to the 2018-2019 flu season, CDC reported 35.5 million cases and about 34,000 deaths. So if we take 6% of the 639,000 deaths from COVID, we get about 38,000. So those are people that died with only COVID, which is a very similar number to 2018 flu deaths. If we want to look at the symptoms, according to the CDC website, of COVID and the flu, the symptoms all the way down the list, last night I looked side by side on the CD website, they are almost identical. Fever, chills, cough, sore throat, congestion, body aches, headache, fatigue, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. The only thing different with COVID, they say maybe a loss of taste or smell, essentially the same. In July of 2020, the CDC issued a notice they would be revoking the emergency use authorization of the PCR test because it could not differentiate between the SARS-CoV-2 virus and the flu virus. There's no certified reference material used in the PCR test to calibrate the results. The PCR test is not based on an actual isolated and purified virus, but on a digital sequence generated by a computer model. Since the CDC has multiple FDA-cleared rapid influenza diagnostic tests for influenza A and B, will all testing locations use this test before a recalled unreliable COVID PCR test, or will we
will we continue to have COVID cases without knowing if that case was influenza A or B positive? The public health measures by local and state authorities are significantly disproportional to the actual numbers of people impacted by this virus. We need to end all mask mandates, stop making kids miss school because of quarantines, and all other unreasonable infringements on our constitutional, inalienable, and human rights to religious and medical freedoms. The purpose of my comments is not to diminish anyone's experience with COVID, but to present data from an objective perspective. Thank you, guys.
Tracy Taylor. Tracy Taylor.
Sorry. I had to get some water.
Hey, everybody. A few days ago, the CDC director said that our vaccines are working exceptionally well. They continue to work well for Delta with regard to severe illness and death. They prevent it, but what they can't do anymore is prevent transmission. I repeat, but what they can't do anymore is prevent transmission. I told you all last board meeting that what happens overseas regarding COVID trends eventually happens here. We are starting to see that come to fruition, as initially vaccine hospitalizations were 1%. Now they're roughly 10 to 15%. A few articles released on Friday, August 13th, reported that vaccinated Israelis accounted for 53% of new daily COVID cases the previous day, while unvaccinated Israelis accounted for 43%. Another report stated 27 vaccinated individuals aboard a Carnival cruise tested positive for COVID. All were forced to isolate. Another local report said Duke University had 29 vaccinated med students and 7 field hockey players who all tested positive and are isolating for 10 days. Additionally, 6 UNC pharmacy students who were vaccinated have COVID. Yesterday, WRAL reported that 97 vaccinated Duke students and 14 staff tested positive in addition to last week's cases among vaccinated. Remember last board meeting when I told you about my mom in the hospital? Well, guess what? She was discharged almost 2 weeks ago, and now she has COVID. Where she got it from a vaccinated staff member at her assisted living facility, 2 staff and 4 residents tested positive. All were vaccinated, all wore masks, and the facility was on lockdown. The latest data out of Israel showed that the Pfizer vaccine efficacy against Delta infection and symptomatic mild disease has dropped to approximately 40%. This was corroborated in a study comparing the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines against Alpha and Delta variants, where Pfizer had 42% efficacy and Moderna had 76% efficacy versus Delta. The Pfizer vaccine is the only vaccine available to kids 12 to 17 years old. Meanwhile, a recent study from Emory University showed robust immune response for greater than 8 months after natural infection. This corroborates a study from May that showed durable natural immunity for 13 months. Why are you and the ABC Science Collaborative pushing to get children vaccinated when COVID is relatively benign in kids 0 to 18 years old and Pfizer vaccine efficacy is only 42%? Why does your quarantine policy allow for exposed vaccinated kids to remain in school while the unvaccinated must quarantine, especially since it has been shown that the vaccine does not prevent infection or the spread of COVID in vaccinated individuals? What about the kids who are 5 to 11 years old? Are they all going to be forced to quarantine if exposed, since none of them can get vaccinated? Why are you considering a guidance that discriminates against athletes and students who participate in extracurricular activities based on vaccination status, when it has been shown that the Pfizer vaccine is no longer effective against mild and infectious spread? Why would you force students to get twice weekly testing for the same reasons? Show us the data that demonstrate that masks are effective and how you can justify discriminating against non-vaccinated kids before you even think about moving the goalposts yet again.
Ashley Sechel.
There are 40 states and still 40 counties in North Carolina who have figured out how to make masks and vaccines optional. Since this board has decided to get involved in the well-being and health care of my child, there are still many questions that are yet to be answered. I had one school board member last week tell me they thought I had an agenda for asking questions. If my child is an agenda, then I have an agenda. Let's slow down and maintain perspective. We need to look at this interaction between the school and the taxpayers and parents. Let's look at it like a corporate business partnership. You must justify your decisions to those paying for your services. When a company is struggling, we're going to have questions. The people being paid should not tell the ones paying that they need to go find their own answers. That approach is demeaning and misses the mark. I tried to meet with the superintendent, who I was sent to an area superintendent. This assistant superintendent refused to answer my questions, and she told me that I needed to go to the ABC Collaborative, the NCDHHS, or to maybe the health department to get my answers. Well, I contacted the ABC Collaborative, and you know what they told me? They told me that they only have one point of contact with the county, the superintendent. This is a circle of incompetence. It is intentional misdirection and a lack of accountability, and it is unacceptable. When a company isn't struggling, why don't we go to the people who are successful? Call up. I was shocked last week when no one has called a state, no one's called a city, no one's called a county to see how they're making it right. We have the strictest lockdowns and the highest vaccination rates in this North Carolina, and we still have problems and no solutions. This approach isn't working. I realize this board has limited healthcare knowledge, but your role obligates you to truly consider all data and viewpoints, not just talking points from various healthcare entities. Instead of fixating all the time on positivity rates, how about you tell us the death and hospitalization rates of 0 to 17-year-olds in Wake County? How about you explain why the vaccinated are getting preferential treatment to the unvaccinated, because we know that they spread and get COVID? How about you tell us about the asymptomatic versus the symptomatic people in this county? Those are the data that we need. This is not cookies and ice cream. It's not check boxes on a piece of paper of people's feelings. This is scientific data and facts, and y'all took on this responsibility for the health care of my child. To be clear, regarding my agenda, my child is my agenda. You are robbing her of a normal and healthy childhood. This is America, the land of the free, and not a place where we teach our children to be submissive to the government.
Good job.
Chair Sutton, for the record, the area superintendent is answering Ms. Sechel's question.
I'm sorry.
Just for the record, the area superintendent in question is answering Ms. Sechel in time.
Okay.
So that she will have her questions addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Clayton Dillard.
Hey, good evening, everybody. All right, so I'm going to focus on a couple of different things, but I guess to start off with, I took a couple of notes. Dr. Martin, I love your data. It's just presented kind of in the wrong way. So if we take your data, the 350 to 400,000 cases per 100,000 kids, and get a percentage, that's 0.0035 roughly. So if you want to turn that number around, we're talking about 99.9964% of the kids do not have a case, are not COVID positive cases. That's pretty freaking good numbers. We could triple that number that you used, and we'd still be at 0.01. It's all in the way that you state the numbers, I guess. So really what I want to talk through is, the topic I've got tonight is truth. So I like truth because it's singular, it's eternal, it's universal, it's unassailable. The truth is comforting, and the truth is like shining the sun into the darkness. It gives courage to the righteous and delivers fear to the wicked. Talking about truth, there's a lot of people that are talking about, these science as being the truth. But the issue is, and they're talking about mRNA treatments, they're talking about lockdowns and so on, but the truth is the way science works nullifies the notion of the science. It's just not, that's not a thing. There are various opinions on the efficacy of those actions in terms of masking and mandates and lockdowns and all that kind of stuff by experienced, educated, and knowledgeable doctors in science. So science is not the science. Not that long ago, the scientists thought that the world was flat. They thought that the world was going to plunge into another ice age in the 60s and 70s, and now they think that the world's going to overheat. And as of late, scientists aren't even sure how many genders there are. So science is not a thing. It's not a consensus. Science is about having a hypothesis and then going out and conducting tests and experiments and seeing what you learn, and then taking those lessons learned and putting them back into the science again to figure out, where did the data take me? That's what science is. But even if all the science and the prevailing science proved that masks worked, that everyone should be forced to stay in their homes, and that laws should be passed to force every American to take the mRNA treatment, there's still one thing standing in the way of all that, and that is freedom. America was and still is the land of the free. We, the people, retain the sovereignty of our own bodies. The government does not have the authority to force an American citizen to wear a face covering, to take an mRNA treatment, or to stay in our homes. I stand for the truth, and I stand for freedom. And I think a lot of the people here stand for truth and freedom, and we're asking you to also stand for truth and freedom. Thank you.
Jessica Stremo.
Thanks for the invitation. I've actually spoken to a couple of you through email. It's nice to see faces. I'm Jessica Stremo. I've been living in Wake Forest for over 20 years now. I have 3 children, ages 20, 18, and 15. The one 15-year-old is still in the Wake County Public School. So I'm here on behalf of him, but I also am here on behalf of the little ones, the little kids. So I realize you guys have been inundated with medical information, statistics, all of this kind of stuff, misinformation, disinformation, who knows what, and how all of these things are working. So I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about sex offenders. Okay? Quick story about my daughter. When she was 5 years old, we were at the Walmart. A man came up and he tried to speak to her in a pleasant way. Hi, how are you today? Leaned down to her level. She got behind my legs, and she was petrified. She's a very friendly child. This was really weird for her. So I asked her what was wrong, and she said, "Mommy, he scares me." So you listen to your kid, right? That was scary for her. So I asked the man to please give us our space. We were leaving, checking out, and he left. No incident. I saw him again cycling in my neighborhood on the streets. My neighbor said, "Did you see that guy before?" And I said, "Yes, he was in the Walmart." She said, "He tried to speak to my 11-year-old daughter while she was out walking the dog on the street." So I looked him up on the sex offender registry, and there he was. He was living in the neighborhood across the street from us. So that was my first experience with how prevalent this is in our community. So I started paying attention. So as of today, there are 55 sex offenders, registered sex offenders, within 5 miles of my house. And as of today, here's the map. We are sitting, in the middle of this circle, 5 miles, 120 of them from where we are sitting right now today. So to be a registered sex offender, you have to be caught, convicted, and put on the registry. So you have to have identification. So imagine how many people are out there doing these horrific things to children that are on the loose. We don't know who they are. They could be anybody. They could be sitting in this room right now. They could be holding public office. They could be in our ministries. They could be in our schools. And they are. Do you guys remember who this is? Kyle Scobie, registered sex offender. He was an elementary school teacher at Wilburn, also a member of his church, Forest Hills Baptist. They're out there. We put masks on our kids' faces. We put masks on adult faces. How do we know who the bad guy is anymore? So our kids are sitting there 8 hours a day, every single day, with masks on their faces, and maybe the janitor is the predator. And maybe, thanks.
Kathleen Baglino.
My printer ran out of ink, so I have to read from my phone. My name is Kathleen Baglino. I am a mom to 3 children who are attending Sanford Creek Elementary, Rollsville Middle School, and Rollsville High School. Prior to our move to North Carolina in January, we lived in New York, where I've been an elementary teacher just outside New York City for 20 years. We homeschooled this past year due to the move, and I reluctantly have enrolled my kids in school here as the mandates about masks have zero scientific evidence to support their effectiveness, yet plenty exists to show how gross and unhealthy they are. But my children wanted an opportunity to make friends here, so I relented temporarily. It is with great disappointment to have my 5th grader come home from school and report that during lunch, they have to sit on one side of a table and face a wall. And they may not talk while they eat. That a lunch monitor walks around the table and yells at them if they speak to their neighbors without a mask. This is one of the few unstructured times in the day where kids socialize and make friends. And there are adults walking the length of lunch tables, barking orders to stop talking to your neighbor. Can someone please provide me with the scientific studies that show kids that face a wall during lunch are safer than kids that face other kids? What scientists have specifically gone into schools to show this is true? These are arbitrary rules being made up and enforced. I say arbitrary because over at the middle school, my 8th grader sits at a table across from friends and chats his entire lunch period. What scientific studies support middle school children being safe, but elementary school children are in danger? Further proving how arbitrary these rules are the pictures of Rollsville Middle School teachers sitting on both sides of lunch tables, maskless, during a summer training in July. They were posted on the school's Twitter feed, and then for some reason they were taken down when I exposed the hypocrisy. Where are the scientific studies that show that teachers are safe to sit maskless and eat and chat, but children are not? Especially since every single piece of evidence shows that children suffer little to no consequence from the virus. Even the so-called Delta variant, no matter how the news spews it out. Lastly, I would like to know what scientific evidence exists that says children who go to their lockers are more likely to get COVID. My 8th grade son's backpack weighs 26.6 pounds. He weighs 102 with a full belly. He has to carry around this weight all day. His 8th grade classrooms are on the 3rd floor. His electives, PE, and lunch are on the 1st floor. It is like a soldier carrying a rucksack. And for what? What evidence supports this? Are teachers and staff carrying around their belongings all day long?
Ms. Baglino.
One more second. I have 2 more sentences. I taught in New York. We had doctors and chiropractors that told our students in middle school and high school, do not carry your backpacks to class. It's unhealthy for your body and causes strain. So please provide for me the evidence that says that no longer is true and kids should be carrying around 25 to 30 pounds worth of stuff all day.
Thank you, Ms. Baglino.
Evidence.
Amelia Dewberry.
Good evening, Chairman Sutton, Superintendent Moore, and board members. As Chairman Sutton said, I'm Amelia Dewberry. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes to speak before the board. Though the safety of our students and other stakeholders in our system continues to be priority one, and I do applaud your decision for their safety thus far, I come to you tonight about a specific curriculum. I stand with fellow retirees and educators that are accompanying me, and parents who are accompanying me virtually, asking that you offer Spanish to all Wake County students from kindergarten to 12th grade. I taught middle school mathematics for 31 years in Wake County Public School System. My children attended Wake County schools and are doing quite well as young adults. So I know we had some of the best schools around. Affording or even requiring all students to take Spanish would make our schools even better to prepare our children to excel in the greater community. I sent this request to Superintendent Moore's office on May 27th. I think she had the request forwarded to Dr. McFarland, and I'm glad she did, because Dr. McFarland's response itemized some of the benefits for K through 12 Spanish instruction to be included in our Wake County Public School System. The list included a greater understanding of other peoples and cultures, clear insight into the structure of the English language, specifically structure, syntax, and vocabulary, and enhanced career potential in the United States and abroad. Another benefit that Dr. McFarland did not mention is the ease that is experienced the younger one is when he begins learning a second language. Nor was it mentioned that Spanish-speaking students are the largest population of students in Wake County who do not have English as the first language. For each of these benefits, especially and ultimately enhanced career potential and initially the ease of learning a second language the earlier it is begun, I ask you to seriously consider requiring Spanish instruction in all schools in Wake County Public School System. And it is my hope, though it is still my hope, that we can do this by second semester of this year. Thank you.
Julie Page.
I don't know if this will stay up, but you show it.
My name is Julie Page, and I am the chapter chair for Moms for Liberty in Wake County. In case you haven't heard of us, we are moms, dads, grandparents, and others that are dedicated to fighting for liberty, freedom, and parental rights at all levels of government. We hold decision makers accountable, or we work to replace them with liberty-minded individuals. We spread awareness and understanding of the limited role of government. We stand together against government overreach and intimidation tactics. We promote teaching the principles of liberty in our homes and community. We engage our communities and elected leaders on key issues impacting our families. We activate liberty-minded leaders to serve in elected positions. Now that you know who we are, what we stand for, and that Moms for Liberty is knocking on your door, I would like to share some thoughts, concerns, and questions that we have for members of our group. Mask should be optional. How will the school board be held accountable for every child that suffers sickness or anxiety from wearing a mask all day? Stop smothering kids in hand sanitizer as it kills good bacteria. They should wash their hands more often instead. Allow kids to talk during lunch and don't make them face a wall while eating. There should be no quarantine upon exposure for all ages of students if they've been wearing a mask. If you say masks work, why are we quarantining? I don't care if they're vaxxed or not vaxxed. The experimental COVID vaccine should never be mandated for students or staff. We need targets and goals to remove the mask mandate now. We would like a detailed weekly itinerary of what is being taught in class and what is being sent home for homework. In other words, we want transparency. Please stop sending children home for allergy-related runny nose. That was never done before COVID. Schools should never test a child for COVID or administer any vaccine without parental consent first. Don't make kids wear masks outside under any circumstances. There should be no discrimination between the vaxxed and the unvaxxed. Why is this happening when both can still get and spread COVID? When will freedom of medical choice return? We're going to have to learn to live with COVID just like any other virus. Why aren't we intensely educating children on things they can do to stay healthy and avoid getting sick? Those are just a few of the things that parents in Wake County are concerned about. I don't have nearly enough time in 3 minutes to speak to them all. We would love to have an open question and answer session with the school board and see if some of these points can be addressed. Please let me know if that's possible. I could be reached at moms4liberty.wake.nc@gmail.com if you'd like to discuss anything that I mentioned here today. Thank you.
Daniel Lamar Grant King. Daniel Lamar Grant King. Lana Witt.
Good evening, Wake County Board and community members. As you can see, Made in America, USA virus shields are available that allow all students and educators to see expressions which assist in mental, emotional development and compassion, while also assisting our hearing impaired. 2 weeks ago, this board informed parents of your will through your vote to force all school system employees and students to be masked. With a 9-0 vote, we are well aware that thousands of taxpayers are taxed with zero representation. Should we truly be a minority, we know that as of the day of this board's vote, there were 5,000 petition signers for masks being optional. We are not anti-mask. We are a large minority community. Mrs. Cash and Mrs. Carter, let's be clear. At a meeting held last night with a resolution to censor you for your lack of representation of those who campaigned for you, I voted in favor of your freedom of speech. I represented you in spite of your lack of willingness to show up in person as we have for months. Let's also be clear, the past year and a half has been hard for all Wake County families. And it's our North Carolina General Assembly members who fought to get our public schools open through funding distributed to North Carolina Department of Public Instruction to ABC Science Collaborative in February, with bipartisan legislation supported with their representative votes. Those votes pressured our governor's hand to move to claim victory in advising NC school boards like this one that NC schools needed to reopen. 2 weeks ago, we were all here to see NCDHHS Secretary Mandy Cohen's OBGYN friend, Michelle Benoit Wilson, offer her 3-minute public comment with her cohort team of 9 other healthcare workers intimidating us, all who miraculously won the lottery for 9 available seats at the important meeting. North Carolina law sets out certain diseases against which every child must be immunized. NC General Statute 130A-152. No COVID-19 shot is among those listed in this statute. The Commission for Public Health, not a local board of education, is the only entity authorized by state law to mandate additional immunizations for children in this state. The UNC system recognized this fact months ago when it concluded that its UNC system did not have legal authority to unilaterally mandate additional immunizations for students without any authority to substitute its own judgment for that of the NC Commission of Public Health. The WCPSS Board of Education and the ABC Science Collaborative seem to be stepping out of your legal lanes by dictating medical decisions to students, parents, and coaches that should be personal, private decisions, as well as held accountable for recognizing mask exemptions and religious exemptions for medical procedures it's promoting.
Russell Brakely Lichtenstein. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, sir.
All right. Good evening, school board members. My name is Russell Lichtenstein. I have 2 children in the system, ages 9 and 13. I'm here tonight because I promised my children that I would do whatever I could to stop this mandate. I told them that in America we have freedom because we have choice, and you all have taken that away from us by your unanimous vote a couple of weeks ago. I tell them that it's un-American to not have choice. That's why people from all around the world are anxious to get here to have choice. As a parent and as an informed adult, I do not give my consent to this mask mandate. During the last board meeting, it was agreed upon to have quarterly reviews of this masking policy. However, I don't recall hearing an exit strategy. I know some other folks have mentioned that. There should be a transparent, simple, easy to understand, and comprehensive determination of the metrics needed to end this mask mandate. I'd like to know if, for instance, we achieve the agreed upon metrics and then those change by the next quarterly meeting, will the mandate be reimposed? And if so, what metrics will determine that? Vague quarterly reviews without a specific and rigid exit strategy is frankly unacceptable. Additionally, the gentleman with all the numbers, pardon me, Mr. Martin, I'm just curious, the case numbers that you are referencing, are those from the children, are they getting that from school or from their house? Because that will, are they contracting the disease at school wearing the mask or at home? Because that will determine kind of, where you go from there. I think that's an important distinction. I think that's about summarizes what I have to say. Thank you very much.
Kristen Beller.
Good evening, Superintendent Moore and Chair Sutton. I apparently am a lot shorter than other people. As the president of Wake NCAE, and on behalf of our members, I offer our gratitude for the unanimous vote to require masks in our schools. Your vote was a strong reminder that matters of public safety are not partisan issues. There are people all over our district who hold vastly different beliefs about policy priorities, who are united around the need for maintaining safety protocols that protect Wake County children from the spread of COVID-19. On that note, mask infidelity and unmasked periods of time at lunch and recess remain top priority problem areas for educators in a variety of different roles and settings. Our priorities are keeping students safe and providing the very best learning opportunities and environments for those students. We've said for over a year now that the best place to do that is in our buildings through in-person learning, and we want to sustain safe in-person learning. Educators want to solve these problems of mask infidelity and social distancing during lunch because both of these will keep our students safe and thus allow them to continue learning in person with us. There's a limit to the creativity that's reasonable to impose on school administrators and their staff to figure out how to social distance during an unmasked lunch with such a large difference in the number of students learning in person together. We know there are several ways to address these issues, but the most effective way will involve more adults than just the ones in the building. Keeping our children safe and sustaining high-quality learning involves parent partnership and state investment. Students need masks that fit them well, and I imagine the school system can assist with this, but the most important factor in students noticing when their masks slip or they don't fit well is the practice that they receive outside of school. Parents are our biggest partners in keeping their children safe, so we're very hopeful that all of our parents are helping their children, even the older ones, habitualize the correct wearing of their masks so that their nose, mouth, and chin are fully covered. We need more adults in our building to support a safe supervised distance lunch. I imagine the school system might consider asking for volunteers to help with this task, but the most important thing to remember is that we needed more adults in our buildings before COVID-19. And the funding for those professionals comes from the North Carolina legislature. In addition to the poor state choices to reduce state allotments over the last decade, a variety of other decisions made by the state legislature about instructional resources, testing, retirement, benefits, and pay have resulted in less adults remaining in education professions. This is a big problem that affects more than just Wake County, and the solution lies in our state senators and representatives reversing those decisions and making our children in their public schools a priority again. Parents are our biggest partners in keeping the resources their children need, both material and human, in our schools where they will best support our students. Right now, as the House and state prepare to negotiate a joint budget proposal, this is the right time for you as board members and our Wake County parents to reach out and emphasize the need for a strong state investment in our public schools. Making that such an investment in our public schools to meet our students' needs and to keep them healthy is not a partisan issue. It's just the right thing to do. Thank you.
Steve Bergstrom. Steve Bergstrom. Jacinta O. All right, last call for Jacinta O, Steve Bergstrom, Daniel Lamar Grant King. All right, that then concludes our public comment. Moving to our information item, update from Superintendent Moore.
Good evening again, Chair Sutton and board members. As has been my practice, I'll provide a brief recap of the information that was discussed during the work session today. There was one item on the work session today specifically targeting opening of school updates. There were 4 areas within that presentation. We started with an overview of the efforts that schools have undertaken at the opening of the school year to promote family engagement. This, again, is a high priority for us as we know that students are coming back into the building, many of them after having been out for over a year, and the importance of how we had to step up our game with families during the COVID closures and how we continue that positive momentum into the school year and as we move forward so that families are truly partners with us in the education of their children. The second portion of that update included updates around health guidance, primarily in 2 areas. Those places where we are already making adjustments and have sent information out to principals or to families or will do so in the next day or so, and the places where we are continuing the protocols that began in the last school year with regards to COVID safety precautions. And both of those within the context of maintaining the 2 priorities of ensuring that we remain open for daily in-person instruction and that we maintain the health and safety of our staff and students. The next section was a staffing update where we reported where we are right now based on feedback directly from our principals as of last week with regards to their school staffing data. And what we saw there is that our vacancy rates for general ed teachers is about 1.5%, which is a little higher than it normally is this time of year. We're normally around 1%. That's about 150 vacancies. Our special ed teacher vacancy is at 5.3%, which is also higher than we normally are, and that's 85 vacancies, and over half of those are in self-contained programs. We have made some progress in our special ed teacher vacancy rate since the last time we reported data to the board, and you also implemented a hiring incentive there. We also talked about the vacancy rate right now is highest really in our virtual academy program. We have an 18.5 vacancy rate there. It's 130 vacancies in that setting. And so we have done a couple of things, including reaching out to staff who are recently retired. We have implemented a strategy that allows, which has been used previously but is used sparingly, that allows staff who want to are willing to provide virtual academy support during their planning periods, and they are compensated for the planning that has to occur outside of the school day in order to do that. So, and that, of course, is a large driver of not being able to open the virtual academy for additional students at this time. And then instructional assistants, where we have made a little bit of progress from the last report to the board. We have about 103 vacancies there. And there is also a hiring incentive in place for instructional assistants. As Dr. Matillo noted, we are processing about 50 hires per day. So we hope that we will continue to do that. But at this point, as this close to the beginning of the school year, we know that we will start the school year with vacancies in some key areas. The last section of the presentation was around operational updates. Mr. Strickland provided an overview of a couple of areas where we have already communicated some things to families and will continue to communicate regarding transportation. The good news, as he said, is we do have our routes done and we have drivers for all of the routes. The bad news is that we've had to stretch the times on either side of the routes, increase the number of double-back sort of shared routes at schools in order to accomplish this because of the percentage vacancies that we have in our bus drivers. And then in CNS, that was actually the highest vacancy rate that we had at around over 25%. That is an area where we will see the impact perhaps in some of the offerings that you see available in cafeterias for students, and but we will be asking students to get their own food, punch in their numbers, that sort of thing. And we'll continue, of course, to look at staffing not only through the beginning of the school year, but for as long as we need to in there. I think that's just a big piece of sort of what's happening that's been mentioned a couple times in a couple of different places today about where we are as a state and as a district. Wake County enjoys a higher quality of life and a higher supplement than many other districts in North Carolina. So we are generally one of the last to hit on hiring concerns, and so we are working with superintendents across the state of North Carolina to see if we cannot bring greater presence and visibility to this need so that our legislature can be engaged in providing some solutions and options and attention to this as well. So, and that concludes my update.
All right, thank you, Superintendent Moore, for that update. Yes, Ms. Kushner.
Thank you. And Superintendent Moore's comments reminded me of a point I didn't make at the work session, so I'm taking another bite of the apple, sorry. When my son, who's now 26, started kindergarten in 2000, our school system, in our state of North Carolina was at the national average for teacher salaries. 20 years of erosion, we are now not only at the bottom of teacher salaries nationally, we are not competitive regionally compared to South Carolina, which pays their special education teachers more, which pays principals more. South Carolina, Virginia, the region, we are not competitive. And this is a state issue. So I would just like for us as colleagues to come together to advocate for our state leaders to better fund our salaries. The bonuses, we've talked about the weaknesses of bonuses at this table, even coming from the state. They're not long-term solutions to the critical needs we have. So I would love for us to rally around maybe a letter, not a resolution. I a couple months ago proposed a resolution, but a letter to our partners at the legislature, our partners in the Congress to fully fund the IDEA from the 70s. So I would love to take a crack at drafting a letter and sharing that with colleagues so that we can just at least have a first step toward a plan, toward advocacy for this significant labor issues that we're facing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kushner, for sharing that. I know you've shared with us a couple of options in terms of a resolution and a letter, so we are considering those and figuring out what's the best step or path forward. So,
I'm happy to take the lead of you and my colleagues. Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Haggerty.
Thank you, Chairman Sutton. Thank you, Superintendent Moore, for the recap of the work session. There was one item at the end of the work session that, due to time, we didn't really have a chance to explore, and so we deferred a question. I am curious to know, I don't know if Mr. Strickland can help, or if anyone on staff, don't mean to call me out, might be able to help, but when you're talking about CNS, right? I know in the past we've heard from Mr. Nieder and Mr. Sneidmiller about some of the things they were doing to try to hire bus drivers. And we've heard about some of the incentives that we're looking at for instructional assistants or others. What can we do with CNS in terms of how we fund it, in terms of addressing that 27.3% vacancy rate?
I know we can all have our kids buy treats at lunch to help fund some of that. They were very excited when I told them that part, Ms. DeLuca.
Back change or an account?
So I think it would be helpful for us to take some time to pull that together and bring it back, send it to you, or make it an agenda item at our next meeting. You know, compensation is a big piece of that. CNS is in the same category as a lot of our instructional assistants where the pay rate does not even begin at $15 an hour. And there are also some training requirements and other things that take time before actually you get started. So there are some things that we've discussed, and we'll prepare something and bring it back.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Superintendent Moore, as we did have to sort of wrap up our work session there at the end? All right. This time, if I can entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda as amended.
Chair Sutton, I move approval of the consent items as amended.
I had a motion from Mrs. Kushner, second from Dr. Martin, to approve tonight's consent agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor show by a sign of aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. That takes us to our action agenda. First item up is one from our Chief of Staff, and this is regarding the data use agreement for the 21-22 school year from the Duke ABC Science Collaborative.
Good evening, Chair Sutton, Superintendent Moore, members of the board. The item before you here this evening is an extension to an existing memorandum of understanding with Duke University, and by extension, the ABC Science Collaborative Program. As many of you know, school districts across the state of North Carolina have been working with this organization over the last year via the Department of Public Instruction to help collect data around the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and to assist schools in making decisions around operations and school safety and those kinds of matters. This agreement includes language that ensures that any information being shared from the district to the collaborative adheres very closely to any and all privacy requirements in federal law, so that we can access their scientific analysis services in terms of the prevalence and the tracking of COVID-19 primary and secondary cases in our schools. And this is presented to you here for your approval this evening. Any questions?
Vice Chairman Haffey.
Chair Sutton, I make a motion that we approve the extension of the MOU with Duke for the 2021-2022 school year.
Second.
Got a motion from Vice Chairman Haffey, second from Ms. Johnson-Hoster to approve staff's recommendation for the data use agreement for the Duke ABC Science Collaborative. Is there any discussion? Mrs. Kushner.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. McMillan, for noting in the précis that you'll be that FERPA will be acknowledged. So just want for clarity, no student identifying information or data will be revealed through this
Currently, the data being shared under this arrangement, my understanding, and Dr. Coe is here to correct me if I say anything wrong, is that it is all aggregate information, that there's nothing confidential that's being shared in order to access the services that the Duke Collaborative is providing to the district at this time.
Thank you. I think it's important for it to be aggregated, not identifying any students. Thank you.
Vice Chair Mahaffey.
Dr. McMillan, just to pull out, the cost of this MOU for the school system is?
$0, please.
All right,
There's on the form on the top, it sort of has this little thing that makes it look like it's $100,000, but that's the form, that's not the cost, it's $0.
Okay. And most of this is funded by the state legislature, and I know when the ABC Science Collaborative came out with their findings earlier in this year, it was shared by State Superintendent Truitt as well. So appreciate the support and financial support from the state for that piece.
Mr. Hagerty.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. Just one issue that I saw that kind of raised a red flag. On page 1 on the sign-off, there's a note from Risk Management about cybersecurity having expired, and that is one of the contract terms later in the agreement that Duke agrees to maintain cyber liability coverage with Wake County Board of Education, and that we'd be on the insurance certificate. Has that matter been resolved?
Can you tell me exactly where that is? I'm not
Sure.
sure.
If you take a look on the first page of the contract document, you'll note the signature there under Risk Management, the insurance review.
Insurance review.
Dated 8/6/2021. This is on the first page of the 13 pages.
I honestly do not. I would have to look into that and get you some more information. Well, we can't sign it till it's right, so.
Yeah, that's
If you approve the document, and then we'll make sure that
It'll be held until we get the
part of the
certificate?
contract, yes.
Okay, great. That allays my concern. Thank you.
Mrs. Carter.
Yeah, that was. I just want to thank you for bringing this to us, and also providing that brief overview of the background. I'm just curious, will there be any direct communication to families about this, just because about a little bit information about the background of this, or why this is coming to us, just because I know right now this is, we've heard a lot of information about the information that's been presented by the ABC Science Collaborative, and I'm just curious, if now we see, some folks might see this and be like, okay, what's going on? So I just think, for clarification and transparency, that might be helpful. And I'm just looking to see what.
I agree. We can ensure that it's in family communication so they understand it.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of extending the data use agreement with ABC Science Collaborative, show by sign of aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Ayes have it. That is approved, contingent upon the changes that are to be made regarding the, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then the item that was moved from consent to action regarding Arc of the Triangle. I think Karen Hamilton will be bringing that to us.
Board Chair Sutton, members of the board, and Superintendent Moore, I'm bringing forward tonight a contract with the Arc of the Triangle. Joining me right now is Jennifer Foltzgraff. She's the Executive Director of Arc of the Triangle. We are contracting with the Arc of the Triangle to help build a program to provide to students who reach age 22 while enrolled in Wake County Public School System who exited school in June of 2021 with a certificate and who are eligible for school services under IDEA with a cognitive disability, and those services ended in June of 2021. These select graduates participated in an extended content classroom during their final senior year before the required exit and have no entitlements remaining under IDEA or any other state or federal education regulations supported by the district. And we're entering into this contract with, joyfully, with the Arc of the Triangle to extend services to students that are no longer eligible for entitlements under Wake County Public Schools. I think it was
Yeah, you got to
for
refresh.
Chair Sutton, I make a motion that we accept this contract with Arc of the Triangle.
I had a motion from Vice Chairman Haffey, second from Mrs. Kushner, to approve the contract with Arc of the Triangle. During the discussion?
If I could just add, this really is an example of outside-the-box thinking and collaboration with our community partners, because the contract with Arc of the Triangle actually achieves the goal of providing students with a transition outside of as they leave the public school system and are no longer under our services. So, and you know, there were several board members who had asked questions about how we were doing that led down the path of us talking about what we could do and what that could look like. So, appreciate the feedback always.
All right, Mrs. Cash.
Yeah, so that was my question. I mean, it's considerable cost, but I'm sure it's worth it. But was this part of, there were some questions that I had with one of the students that was leaving the system and didn't get their last year of education. And will this, do the parents know this? How do they know?
Sure, those are great questions. And first of all, there were several of you that challenged me to think differently.
Okay.
And it was a great opportunity. So all students in Wake County Public Schools experienced a COVID-related school year that ended. With the conversations that happened with board members, we started to think about how we might meet some of the challenges that you were providing in conversations a little bit differently. Arc of the Triangle is a member of our agency committee. They have been a strong partner with us, and Jennifer presented me with an opportunity in about 45 minutes after me presenting the dilemma to her. So it's been a fortuitous conversation, and it will be, we hope, a nice pilot for things to come and the futures of our future graduating students.
So do the parents, so like...
Oh, I'm sorry, that was your question.
Well, no.
She's contacted all of them.
Okay. The one that I talked to you about, I'm just,
Oh, yep.
Okay, good. That's...
Sorry.
I don't want to go back around again, but, okay, good. That's what I wanted to... And do you feel like they're taking advantage of this now? Are they happy
Yes, we
with
do.
what we're offering?
Well, I can't measure people's happiness. I'm happy.
Did they look happy? Or
I think
sound
they are happy.
Okay. Thanks.
Mrs. Carter.
I just wanted to thank you for bringing this to us, and I appreciate it being moved to the action so that we could hear a little bit more about, I think, what's a very important work that's going to be done and acknowledgement. And I think it really speaks to ensuring every single one of our students, even though matter, and ensuring that we can support them in sometimes non-traditional ways. So this is great. I just want to say thank you.
You forgot something, Mrs. Cash?
Yeah. No, I just get 2 questions every time. So will we get kind of like a report back of these students'
We can do that.
ability to move
We can
through
do that.
this? I would like that a lot, so.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Scott.
Sorry, I thought Ms. Kushner had her hand up before I did, so that just threw me off, but no, thank you. I just wanted to say, sort of unrelated to this matter, but I did want to officially thank the Arc of the Triangle for the work that you do. Having a family member who passed away a few years ago, but who could have benefited from such a program as they transitioned into adulthood, I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate all the work that you do.
I'm smiling underneath this, just so you know.
Mrs. Kushner, appreciate your patience.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. No, thank you. And I want to add my thanks both to you, Ms. Hamilton, for thinking outside the box and receiving our advocacy, but Jennifer for being such a long time community partner and supporter of our school system. I don't think folks realize how much you have impacted our kids, and that your organization helps our community and our students. So thank you for being here tonight and being such a great partner. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve the contract with the Arc of the Triangle, show by sign of aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Contract is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, if I could entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Chair Sutton, I make a motion that we go into closed session to consider confidential personnel information protected under GS 143-318.11A1, A3, and A6, to consult with Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privileges provided in GS 143-318.11A3, to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as consulted, provided in GS 143-318.11A3 due to current litigation, LP by parent or guardian, JPV Wake County Board of Education, OAH 20 EDC 832, OAH due process, EDNC 520 CV 481 BO federal, and AMV Wake County Board of Education pre-litigation claim.
Got a motion from Vice Chairman Haffey, second from Mr. Hager to go into closed session for the items just stated and as printed on our agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor show by sign of aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. We now stand in closed session. Thank you all for joining us this evening.